Today, the Supreme Court said it agreed to take up the issue of gender-affirming care. The case involves a Tennessee law that restricts drug and hormone therapy for transgender minors. The Biden administration wants to block the law and others like it. Arguments will take place in the fall term, which begins in October. National correspondent Jamal Andrus joins us live now in Dallas. So, Jamal, this is the first time the High Court will be taking a look at a case that's like this, that is impacting minors. What more can you tell us?
Yeah, Chris. Well, look, the first thing I can tell you is that this is going to have extraordinarily wide-ranging implications. I want you to take a look at this map just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about here. 25 different states have already passed the law that either bans or restricts gender-affirming care for minors. This is something that has made its way across the country like wildfire, these particular bans. And so in many of those cases, in many of those states, at least a dozen of them currently have some sort of ongoing litigation on the books. You know, the Texas Supreme Court has already weighed in on this issue here in Texas. This case is stemming from a lawsuit in Tennessee. There's an ongoing lawsuit in Kentucky. All over the country, you have legal challenges to this practice, this law, that essentially could be settled and done with due to a decision by that Supreme Court. Also, just for context, 14 democratically led states have also passed legislation, but essentially pushed the opposite way, enshrining in law protecting this kind of gender-affirming care. Now, look, the case before the Supreme Court, again, stems out of Tennessee. It specifically relates to those puberty blockers, surgery, as well as hormone therapy for transgender minors. And again, this is something that was essentially confirmed by the Sixth Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals, saying that they can enforce this ban, and now being taken up by the Supreme Court. This is something that has been brought by three Tennessee youth, a 16, 13, and another 16-year-old who had access to some of that gender-affirming care, again, those hormone therapies and puberty blockers, but also by the Biden administration now. The Biden administration has jumped onto this, essentially saying this case is of general public importance. And so they will also be a member, an important party when this case makes it to the Supreme Court. I want to play you a little bit from an interview we had here on Scripps News not terribly long ago with Harley and Jeff Walker. This is an Alabama father and daughter who also dealt with gender-affirming care and now advocate on its behalf. Here's a bit of what they had to say.
We really didn't know what being transgender meant. So ultimately, we wanted the best for Harley. So like she mentioned, we went to our local pediatrician. We tried to, figure out what's the best course of care for her. And so kind of working from there.
My parents always made it clear that we are going to love you no matter what happens, no matter who you are. And so I think that affirmation, especially in the moment, whenever, it's a difficult topic, it might be a difficult thing to hear as a parent at first.
Now, Chris, listen, this is a subject that has been highly debated and has been weighed in by parties all across the country, including the medical community. The American Academy of Pediatrics, as well as the American Medical Association, have both weighed in here, pushing on behalf of offering gender-affirming care across the country. They even sent a letter in 2021 to the National Governors Association calling for these kinds of bans to be lifted across the country, because they say that it leads to a dramatic reduction in suicide attempts, as well as depression and anxiety. People on the other side of this issue, though, call some of those studies junk science, and also say that these kinds of life-altering, what they call irreversible decisions, should not be made by people under the age of 18. Not only that, in Europe, some medical communities out there say there has been essentially an overdiagnosis of the gender dysphoria that these kinds of care are supposed to treat. So again, an issue that has made its way all across the country and even internationally, that could have a huge decision coming from the Supreme Court. Now, I don't want to talk this up too much, because again, this is going to take a long time before we get a decision here. They're not going to hear this until the fall, and we won't have a decision on a blockbuster case like this more than likely until June or July of next year. So again, a full 365 days before we get a conclusion on this. But important news coming from the Supreme Court to deal with an issue that is, taking up at least half of the country.
All right, Justice Correspondent Jamal Andrus for us live with the latest from Dallas. Thank you.